Everyone, it's Nikki. Sorry if my voice is a little bit weird. I'm just getting over a cold right now. Um, so what I want to about today is that I think it's great that therapy has become a lot more socially acceptable than it used to be like years ago. I like that especially if I'm talking to people my age or younger, I can very casually mention the fact that I go to therapy, and it's no big deal. Most people my age will say like, "Oh yeah, I told my therapist this, I told my therapist that." And it's just not really a big deal like it used to be. You can talk about it the way you talk about going to see the dentist. And I also like the fact that going to therapy is something that anybody can do, that it's not I know there's reasons why people can't go, but it's something that it's not seen as much that you have to have like a really huge problem to go. That I think it's more common for someone to say like, I might have a smaller problem and I want to go anyway. Like, it's not something where you have to have a huge problem like it might have been in the past. So I like that. I like that in that sense it's become more common. But the thing that I feel a little weird about is that something I hear a lot is that when somebody is um doing something that you're not comfortable with, maybe somebody is like really really upset about something and you don't think they should be, or something like that, where people say, "Oh, that person needs therapy." And I think it's perfectly fine to suggest that somebody goes to therapy, if you're really thinking about that person, if you're really truly it's about their well-being, that you think that it might make them feel better. But I feel like it's become very commonplace that a lot of times when we say, that person needs therapy, it really has to do with how we feel around them and our own comfort level. Like, we want them to turn into someone that we would feel more comfortable around, someone who's not going to do whatever it is that they're doing. And I caught myself one time when I was in a therapy session recently talking to my therapist about how I'm not going to do all these things that other people want me to do. I actually listed going to therapy. I actually said to her in a session, I'm not going to therapy. And then all of a sudden I did a double take, like, wait a second, I'm in therapy. Like, how am I saying I'm not going to therapy when I'm in therapy? But I want to explore that. Like, what exactly does it mean when I say I'm not going to therapy? Because I think what I really mean is that my therapy is 100% for me. Like, 100%, and it's not for anybody else's comfort. What I am trying to achieve in therapy is not going to make me a better person or a good citizen or a more productive member of society or more productive in any way. My personal goals in therapy, as far as I'm aware, do not align with any of the things that other people or society in general would want from me. There is no correlation, and I don't think that my therapy would necessarily benefit anybody else, or that it would be what people would hope I would be doing. If you looked at me like, geez, she needs therapy, I'm not doing that kind of therapy that would make you feel more comfortable around me. So let me give an example. I went through trauma and I am currently trying to be the way that I was before trauma. Now, let me give you an example about who I was before I was traumatized. Now, this example is going to involve people being really mean to me, but I want to just be clear that this example was not traumatic for me. Even though it involves people being mean, it was not traumatic because I was a different person back then who wasn't really affected by things like this. So, when I was in seventh grade, some friends and I had gotten into an argument about who got to be in this dance piece for the school concert. And at some point when we were fighting about this, I said that if I couldn't be in this dance, I was not going to be in the school concert at all. I said that over the phone one night. So the next day, I get to the cafeteria. I was the last person to sit down at my lunch table, and six of my classmates were sitting at the table and said, "We have something to tell you." And I was like, "What? Is this about the concert?" And they said, "Sort of, but it's about more than the concert." And they basically told me about how I needed to change my attitude and how I couldn't keep doing things like saying that I'm not going to be in the concert because I didn't get my way on being in the dance. And I told them, no, I am not going to change that. And 6 people all this felt like an intervention to me because I couldn't really leave because this was in the school cafeteria and we weren't allowed to get up until the bell rang. So I couldn't really leave the table, and there were 6 people telling me that I had to change or else I wasn't gonna have any friends in the future when I was in high school, and I told them, "No, I am not changing. This is me, and I am going to keep being this way." And this went on for 2 days, actually 2 lunch periods, because the first day that it happened, the girl in our group who was, like, the most pushy and the most, like, telling everyone else what to do, she happened to be out sick that day, so this repeated the next day. I think they all told her about it sometime when I wasn't there, and, she was, like, the second day really, really pushing me to change. And I just kept saying, "No, I'm not doing that." And I got really, really mad at them, but I never wavered. I never felt guilt or shame or any kind of emotions that would make me feel like, remorseful. Like, I didn't feel anything about this other than that they were being mean to me for continuing to expect me to do something that I had said very clearly that I was not going to do, that I was not going to change. And I would say, I was upset those days, but I would say that I was basically unaffected by it. The reason it eventually stopped is I think they realized that they couldn't do anything with it. They couldn't reason with me, trying to get me to do something that I wasn't going to do was like expecting a rock to get up and start dancing. I think they understood that. And I went home and I was on my merry way. I didn't feel any kind of guilt inside. I didn't feel embarrassed. I didn't feel anything about this. I was just very angry that they didn't respect my boundaries when I said stop, that they just kept going when I said stop. And I feel at the time like I was completely unaffected by that intervention. I feel like I just went on my merry way. I kept doing what I was doing. I really didn't change anything at all. And in terms of how things turned out later, this was so at that time I was going to a very small school where everyone was kind of alike and I really didn't fit in. And when I went to high school, I immediately made lots of friends. Like, this was the complete opposite. Like, they were telling me that, it's because of your attitude and this is why nobody, likes you at this school and stuff like that. And they were telling me that, like if I improved myself, then the popular kids would like me. And then, I would just have a lot more friends and stuff. And I was like, no, like I'm not changing myself. I didn't change myself when I went to high school like at all. I cannot say that when I went into high school, I changed at all upon entering. I would say that once I was in high school and once I made friends, I became a lot more confident because I felt like, hey, people like me and I have friends now and stuff like that. But that change in me where I became more confident, that came from having friends. It wasn't I cannot say that when I entered high school I changed anything about myself at all. So basically I just moved into a different environment where I could easily find people who accepted me exactly the way I was without me having to change myself at all. And the thing is, the way that I was in 7th grade when this happened, when I was 12, that is how I'm aspiring to be again now. That got beaten out of me when I was in college and when I went through trauma, but that is the real me, the me who could sit there with 6 people pushing me to change and just saying no and being unaffected by it and just going about my business. That is how I want to be again, and that is what I'm working on in therapy. Now, a lot of people wouldn't approve of that. Like, if you were there and witnessed that, I feel like a lot of people would say that you don't want to be that stubborn. And many forms of therapy would not respect a kid like me. many forms of therapy would want me to be more open to listening to their suggestions and take that in and see it as a problem that I acted the way that I did back then. There are many kinds of therapy that would do that, but I am not doing any kind of therapy like that. I actually walked away from therapy that I felt like was pushing me to not be so stubborn and to not be the way that I was when I was 12. Um, but I am currently working on getting back there, and I feel like I am close. I feel like I'm getting closer. I'm definitely closer than I was a few years ago, but I just want to be very clear that that person is who I want to be. After I went through trauma, I became deeply affected by what other people wanted from me. Deeply affected to the point that if I felt like other people really, really wanted me to do something or to change in some way, I would either do it against my will without wanting to, or I would not do it, but I would like curl up in a ball and feel all guilty and ashamed and embarrassed about the fact that I wasn't doing this thing that other people wanted me to. I did not have the ability to know that someone else wanted me to do something and just go on my merry way not doing it. I didn't possess that ability when I was traumatized and like shortly after the trauma. And that could come from stuff that was much more distant than this, because the thing that happened in 7th grade, these were my friends and my classmates. These were people who I saw every day, who I'd known for a long time, who I was going to have to interact with again the next day and for the next 2 years at school. So that is a much higher pressure situation than, say, just sort of a general thing. Like if you were at a lecture where the person giving lecture says, like, everyone should do this and they don't know you personally and you're never going to see them again. But I feel like since my trauma happened, I would avoid many situations because I would feel like I might get pushed into doing something I don't want to do. And that idea of getting pushed to do something I didn't want to do was like, it was such a big issue to me because I knew that mentally I couldn't really handle it. Mentally, I could not be pushed to do something I didn't want to do and walk away while being able to not do the thing and also not feel guilty about it. I did not have that ability after the trauma happened. And I always think back to that 7th grade intervention as an example of how I want to be. And I just wanted to talk about this because this goes against, I think, what a lot of people think that therapy would be like when you say, oh, that person needs to go to therapy. And so, this is what I mean when I say that who I want to be does not necessarily align with who society would want me to be, who other people in my life would want me to be. And it doesn't align with who a lot of therapists out there would want me to be. It is 100% just who I wanna be, and that is what I mean when I say that even though I am in therapy, I am never going to go to therapy in the sense of what that would mean for most people and what they would want me to be.